And thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Nancy.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
We're looking at the real estate sector of the country, or the housing sector. My first question is there a housing crisis in Nigeria?
We have a housing crisis in Nigeria, quite all right. It's evident in our people who are living in very, very terrible conditions that are not conducive for human habitation. You see them under the bridges, you see them in various slums, you see them managing 10 people in a room in various other places. Next to food and clothing, housing is one of the indicators of somebody's ability to sustain a living. And we have found out that in the country, we have a huge housing deficit. Currently, at 17 million housing deficit.
It depends on who you are listening to, because some will say 18 million deficit, some will say 17 million deficit, but whatever we know, there's a deficit anyway.
There's a deficit. And that is the issue. And the issue is that inside that challenge, inside that deficit, we have a solution for the unemployment and economic inclusiveness we are asking of ourselves. How do we get our people to work? How do we get our youths? Because we have massive youth unemployment, currently at 53%, if you look at some quarters. And now we have a veritable tool in the housing sector to make sure that we have economic inclusiveness. Because in the housing sector, when you drop 1 billion naira in the housing sector, both the man in the bank, the CEO of the company, to the man selling food at the site will benefit. So it has a huge diagonal effect from the entrepreneurs, the investors, to the people in the street. It provides food for everybody. And we know that over the whole world, globally, housing has been a tool for countries to come out of recession, to come out of economic problems. You remember very well that in 2008, that was what Obama did. Yeah. And we're asking ourselves, how have we not been able to...
and Fannie Mae crisis and all of that, the mortgage crisis,
Precisely. So we have to look inwards and ask ourselves, why do we have the housing sector contributing only 0.5% to our GDP? Whereas in other countries like South Africa, it's 30% of the GDP. So we have a huge industry that if we can get our roadmap properly, we have an opportunity to provide not only shelter for our people, but also to provide economic inclusiveness for the urban poor, and also provide good heritage for our people. And that is one area that we have neglected over the years. We've looked at this as a country, we've tried to address it. We have tried to address it through the Shagari housing. We have tried to address it through the Jakonde housing. We've tried to address it when Jakonde was Minister for Housing. But at any point in time, we don't sustain the momentum. We pull back. You do remember that in 2002, there was a crisis. Then Adams Oshomole was the president of NLC. And he was agitating that the workers are contributing to the National Housing Fund, but not getting the houses. A lot of these workers retire without a home. They retire to the village, an unfamiliar terrain, and they die off. The core issue is this. Presently, we have in our country where the workers contribute to the pension fund, 7.5% of their own salary, 7.5% contributed by the employers. Totally would have 15%. They contribute another 2.5%, totaling 17.5%. The question is, how are they benefiting from those contributions? When you and I know that at the end of the day, after working for 35 years, they get back those money at maybe 2%, 4% interest. But the purchasing power, the real purchasing power, the real value of that money has depreciated by over 80%. So the question is, are we being fair to these people? Under the National Housing Fund, they're supposed to have about 4 sources of funding. One was the 2.5% contribution. The other one was the 10% from the banks, part of their loan portfolio. The other aspect was, the third one was from the insurance companies. And the most important one was supposed to be from the federal government. Over the years, we have neglected to invest in this important sector. It is important in many dimensions. One dimension is that it creates employment. The other dimension is that it satisfied a basic need of the populace. The third dimension is that it enhances the economy. The issue then is that we have sat back to ask ourselves, in view of the potential for this sector to re-energize our economy, why are we not investing our time and energy on it?
Now, who should you pose that question to? Is it the government? Because can the government really provide housing, enough housing for its citizenry? In Nigeria, we're 180 million plus, according to the data. Some say we're even more than 180 million, that we're close to 200 million. Some are saying, oh, that we also need to verify our data. We may not be up to 180 million. But whatever it is, the government, we don't have adequate or houses for people to live in. And one will begin to wonder, like you're saying, that one will work for 35 years or thereabout. And at the end of the day, you don't have a decent
accommodation
roof over your head. Perhaps one would also say that it's one of those things that will make people corrupt. It's one of those things that will make people steal. Because at the end of the day, I want to be comfortable. I want to have a roof over my head. I want to secure my future, as it were, because the government is not really interested in my well-being. I'm not justifying corruption, but these are some of the issues that the government really needs to look at, to say, what are the issues that are really making corruption grow in the society? The salary structure in the country isn't lovely at all. A graduate or a level 1 officer, okay, with minimum wage 18,000. Some states are saying, oh, we can't pay 18K. How much is 18K? I don't even think it's how many dollars now. You know, so what the government investing in the sector, can the government really invest in that sector right now?
Thank you so much. You do remember that when we had that crisis in 2002, the response of President Obasanjo then was to constitute a committee led by then Governor Peter Odele. They did a study and they found out that there was this need to match, we have mortgage funds available, but we don't have the houses to create the mortgages on. Then the issue then they decided was that government should create the enabling environment. What they did was to look at the sector and find a way of energizing, a way of creating an enabling environment. They created three institutions. One was the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria, as a means of galvanizing the energy and coalescing the developers so that they can have an organized private sector devoted to housing supply. Then they created Mortgage Bankers Association of Nigeria, comprising of all the primary mortgage banks, so they can have a voice they can meet with. Then they created the Building Material Producers Association of Nigeria. They were trying to look at the value chain and who are the stakeholders in those value chain. How can we engage them constructively and be able to find out their problem and then be able to tell them this is our problem and our problem is how do we create those houses. The end result of that was that they had an opportunity. It has not been sustained. What is missing is the political will to create an enabling environment.
Political will by government?
By government. The political will needs to be there. We have in the statute creating Federal Mortgage Bank. They are supposed to fund it. But it's surprising that government can invest money in entertainment, put trillions in other sectors, but they're not putting in this sector where the workers are already putting their money into. That is what key area that one sits back to ask himself, what is happening? We have the workers contributing 17.5% of their salary into this sector, into pension, into their future.
That's for those that are really contributing.
We have over 4.20 million contributing presently. Then the question is, why are we not investing or matching what they are putting in there? They are putting their own money where their mouth is. It's being deducted as source from their salary, but the matching grant from government, the enforcement of the provisions of the National Housing Fund Act is not being matched by government. And we're asking ourselves, how do we go forward from here? And secondly, government decided to intervene in providing mortgages. And we're saying this is very beautiful. But you cannot fly with one hand. No matter how much you influence the demand, the supply must meet the demand. And when we have the demand for houses via mortgage outstripping the supply of those houses, what you are going to have is skyrocketing in prices.
The question also will be this year's budget proposal. I know 433 billion naira is earmarked for works, housing, and power ministry. I think the housing part of it will get about 66 billion naira.
Precisely.
I can imagine you say no. I wanted to ask, are you satisfied with the attention in the power, works, and housing budget? 66 billion naira to housing. It perhaps justifies what you're saying.
No, the 66 billion to the power sector, to the housing sector. The issue is, if you fund the housing sector by government direct intervention, you are not creating a sustainable environment for that intervention. We've gone through this part before. During the Shagari housing, any little problem between the state government, because you know that the issue of land on which the houses will be built is in the domain of the state government. Yeah. So any little problem, any political problem will lead to the failure of those housing projects. And that is why over the years, since we are going through the route of commercialization and privatization, that is removing these activities from the realm of government and putting it into the hand of the private sector and allowing government to play the role of an umpire, the role of enabling environment creation. Why are we going back to the same failed approach to housing delivery? Can
private sector be trusted? That is also the question. Because if you're taking a look at, we'll talk about a lot of things, public-private partnership, or get the private sector, organized private sector to do a lot of things. The question will be, can the private sector be trusted? People like you be trusted? Real estate developers, can they be trusted?
Precisely.
Private developers, can they be trusted to handle that?
Nancy, you see, the question you've asked now is very critical. Last year, when I came into about a year ago, the first thing I did was to convene a meeting of all the stakeholders, involving the ministry, involving the FHA, involving Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, involving Federal Mortgage Bank, involving all the stakeholders, NLC, TUC. We sat down and we're asking ourselves, where are we getting it wrong? They laid a lot of accusations against developers. And we said, fine. We also pointed out areas where there are deficiencies in their operation guideline. We said, go home and begin to amend your sector. What we have done, learning from our experience in the housing sector and our role as real estate developers, is to go back and find out there is competency deficiency
on whose part?
On the part of some of the developers. We found out there was also deficiency in the number of artisans we have in the country. So what we have gone back to do is to start a series of training. For instance, we now have a collaboration with Center for Housing Studies, University of Lagos, in conjunction with Chartered Institute of Housing London, to train the developers and give them the skill set required to play their role. Down the line, we have also collaborated with System, Construction Skills Training Employment Program. They have received help from DFID to be able to train the artisans, the masons, the welders, the tilers, so that the skill set deficiency, which have led to the failure we have seen in our delivery process as developers, is corrected. That is what we are doing in-house. And currently, we have a program that within the next few months, we want to train the first set of 10,000 artisans across the country.
Training those artisans, are they the artisans that are within your own purview?
They are the ones that will build those houses.
Within your purview. How about private developers that you people don't have eyes on, that are probably tainting your image? When
we train them, we'll be able, they are affecting the whole market, because they're not going to work only for us, they work for everybody who can pay for their services. And once we start with the 10,000, we're going to upscale to over 100,000 as we go along the line. Because we found out that it is a veritable tool to change the quality of homes we have. We're able to interface also with NLC. We found out that the scope, the demand factor, a civil servant on 40,000 per annum wants a house that will cost 10 million.
That's on 40,000 per month.
Per month. Is asking for a house that will cost 10 million. And it's not affordable. So we are dealing with all the issues we identified. We identified a number of issues. One is the affordability gap. Most civil servants, most workers cannot afford the type of houses we have now. So can we come down on our expectations as workers? Can you demand for what you can pay for?
So who would afford those houses? If they don't want those houses, who will go for those houses?
We are changing the houses we are delivering.
Okay.
We are building those houses that can come under the affordability of the civil servants. And we're telling them to accept these houses, because that is what we have in South Africa. You have the square meterage of those houses coming down.
Is it a mass housing model?
It's a mass housing model, because that is where we have the huge demand, where we have our people who are living in some homes 5 square meters in a slum. So we are saying, can we move this man who is staying on 5 square meters in a slum to a place where he can live in 10 square meters and then still have the communal shared facilities?
How do you think that model should be done, especially with government attention on it? Because perhaps it's mass housing we need in Nigeria. The question will be, how much will it even take you to build, let's say, 2-bedroom flat, for example? that can actually get those, or even, what do they call it? Is it self-contained now?
Yeah, self-contained, a studio apartment.
Yes, a studio apartment. So how much will it cost? So are those the kind of houses we should be looking at? Studio apartment, 2-bedroom flat, or a bungalow, 3-bedroom flat, nicely built. How much? Perhaps 2 million, 3 million naira.
Even houses of 1.5 million?
5 million, yes.
1.5 million.
Yeah.
It's possible. The issue is this. Most Nigerians want a bungalow. The cost of infrastructure for those bungalows are quite high. And the issue is, can we now build high-rises and ask them to accept some of these things, because that is what we can afford as at this moment.
Okay, build high-rises?
Yeah, we can build maybe 2 floors.
Okay.
And that is what they are doing already in Abuja. They are asking, instead of dotting the whole landscape with bungalows that cost a lot in terms of servicing them with infrastructure, can we have high-rise? Can we have other different configuration of houses that will be affordable? But more important than that is the need for government to finance and restructure Federal Mortgage Bank to play a veritable role that we are meant to play as secondary mortgage markets and be able to fuel the supply side of the demand. Currently, the Nigeria Mortgage Finance Company is supposed to fuel the mortgage, the demand side. But we need construction finance. We don't have an institution that is empowered sufficiently by government to fuel the supply side. And that is a core problem. The second issue is that we need to have foreclosure laws. We have a lot of them lying there in the National Assembly that will make it mandatory that if you default, you are likely to lose your house, because so that people will stop seeing mortgage loans as national cake. We know precisely. So we need to also look at the fact, how do we engage the states to make sure that the transaction costs and time on registration of titles come lower than what it is presently.
What do you think about Raji Fashola being the Minister of Works, Power and Housing, bearing in mind that those are 3 critical sectors? Housing is one big thing, you know. Would you have preferred there was a housing minister? I don't know if we've gone past that now, but what are your sentiments?
I think we've gone past that. From his record in Lagos State, I think he has a capacity. The issue is the minister doesn't do everything. He delegates, and we have institutions that he can work with. The role of the ministry is to provide the policy guidelines, the general direction. And I'm sure that if he is focused, as he has been with Lagos State, he will be able to create the enabling environment and not get themselves bogged down with actual construction. This is what we are saying. Because if we see the ministry as an enabler, then we'll be able to define their work, and they will not be involved in direct construction. Government should not be involved in direct construction of houses. Government should be able to check and find out how are the various stakeholders playing very well. Over the years, you and I will know that the various state housing development corporations, which were created primarily to service housing provision for the poor, have deviated. There are no more building for the poor. So we have this attempt by everybody to move away from servicing the poor, from giving them the democratic dividends. And the question is, why are we doing this? Why are we removing every safety net? We say that when we come to electricity, we remove everything that the poor are dependent upon. We remove subsidy in everything. The money they are contributing, we're not looking in to give them value for their money. And it's a food for thought for many of us who are out there managing various sectors of our economy.
How much of the construction of houses in Nigeria are in the hands of the locals? Because I do understand that housing construction, just like you explained earlier on, trickles down even to the bottom of the pyramid. You see that even where they are building houses or where they are doing any construction, a woman that has no job before will just think, okay, the workers on this site should be able to eat, and if she can do akara, she will just be doing akara there in the morning. So it really trickles down to every strata of the economy. How much of it is actually in the hands of the locals?
The current construction method we have now encourages our people, the local artisans, to be involved because they are used to brick and mortar technology. Therefore, if we invest now in housing, it will trickle down immediately. If you drop, say, 500 billion, 200 billion into Federal Mortgage Bank, into the various institutions that can fuel the supply side, the construction arm, what you will find out is that the various people, they are, as you mentioned, the man in the street without a job, the school leaver, The interesting thing that when you look at the statistics of unemployment, the greatest numbers are in the school leavers, secondary school leavers. And these are the ones that can easily move into the artisanal realm and become able to feed themselves and feed our people. But we are asking ourselves that if we move into this sector, for 1 unit of house that you build, you create about 7 to 8 jobs. So if you are building 1 million, if you are building 100, you're already creating 800,000 jobs per annum. We have also looked at it very well and asked ourselves, if we are able to move up to 1 million houses per annum, we are creating 8 million jobs from this sector alone. And what is missing is an urgent need for these various stakeholders to sit down and find out where are we not getting it right. They tried to do it in 2012 when they convened a housing stakeholder summit in the presidential in the presidency, and they were able to identify areas. Having identified that stopped there.
How about our housing policy?
The housing policy is there. Beautiful instrument, but it's not being implemented. We need to look at that instrument and find out why. Our focus is, no matter how you are failing in your own sector, the focus is, I can't, because of your failure, refuse to provide employment, refuse to provide economic inclusiveness for our people. And that is where we are missing it. We become emotional. Oh, I don't like how this sector is providing, is moving around, then we drop the ball. If we look at that housing policy document, we have beautiful provisions for it in there that will ensure that we have employment generation, we have economic inclusiveness, and we will now stem some of this insecurity we have. Because when they are busy at the site, either digging, or either selling akara, or providing food, they will not have time for some of the crime and activities you have going on in our society.
For us to even advance the housing sector in Nigeria, I recognize that we should have a very vibrant mortgage institution, the PMIs, the primary mortgage institutions. What role do you think they would play in all of this? Because you go to a mortgage bank, for example, or how many of us even have accounts with mortgage banks? You know, that you want to have a house, you go to the bank, okay, I have about so money, and the bank tells you, okay, I can give you this, then spread what you're going to pay over a period of time, 5, 10, 20 years, it depends. So how much role can the PMIs actually have in this? Bearing in mind that they also have their own challenges, because I've spoken to a lot of them too. They tell me, Nancy, we are working within this tough business space.
Yeah.
Too. There are a lot of things that needs to be amended. What do you think?
Number one, we need to talk to ourselves. And that's why when I came in last year, we decided to convene a meeting with them, Mortgage Bankers Association of Nigeria, Federal Mortgage Bank, Federal Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. Can we sit down, gentlemen and ladies, and look at this issue on a holistic platform and stop looking at it from problem perspective? Inside what we have as a problem in our sector, as you mentioned, mortgage bankers, we have also solutions to those problems. We can have creative initiative that will provide answers for what you are having in your own sector from another sector. Instead of talking ourselves and being insular, the mortgage banks are trying. They have done very well. They have recapitalized to 5 billion. They have moved ahead to create the NMRC. They have done very well. But there is still one issue. That same issue that resurfaced in 2002 when NLC President Oshomole led the workers to pull out of National Housing Fund is still there. And that problem is, how do we provide the supply side? You can never fly with one wing. There has to be a balance for you to fly. As you are making good the mortgage sector, you are also make good also the construction finance sector, so that the houses are going to be available for mortgage. 2 days ago, a mortgage PMI called me. Do you have homes? We want to create mortgages for our people. We've just received so tranche of billions. I said, sorry, I don't have. And many of our people don't have.
So there's no supply for demand.
There's no supply for the mortgages. And that is the issue. So if you, for a PMI to be sustainable, there is a threshold of the number of mortgages that we must create for them to be effective. CBN told them, restrict yourself to creating mortgages. We don't want you to diversify into other areas. But there is a threshold, a number of portfolios of mortgages they must have for them to be sustainable. They don't have that. And that is inducing failure in some of them.
Okay, let me just quickly take a few comments coming through. Then at the end of the comments, I'll ask you the way forward because we're gradually coasting to the end of the show.
Thank you.
All right, Alexander Phillips says that massive housing should be a private venture with the government intervention on building materials cost leading to low-cost housing. Bashir is saying in order to achieve better results, local artisans should be involved in building houses. While Boko Musbal is saying that the housing sector isn't supposed to be just a money-making venture, but should be made to better the lives of our civil servants. Economic Punk says, I think affordable mass housing should be a business of the state, local government, rather than the federal government. They are closer to the citizenry. While Chijoke says, Nancy, where can I obtain loans to develop my agric farm? What can I say now? Chijoke, let me go ahead. Herman says, so many staff contribution hanging in the mortgage banks with no house provided. Please, how do you sort out this matter? I think that's a very vital question. Let me also take this lastly. Olusegun says that Nancy, I bet you, if our successive past governments have been embarking on housing since, by now we would have had enough. Okay, Uchenna says this one is very key. Nancy, how do you identify a fake developer? Because there's a company that comes to our office to preach about landed properties in Pape.
Thank you. We're creating a portal because we are the organized private sector involved in housing delivery. We are creating a portal that we will look at your site, we look at your processes as an estate developer, your integrity, your goodwill, your administrative acumen, and be able to say you are able to deliver on this, and we can put it on our portal. So that whatever you see on Redan portal, you can hold us accountable for that. Now, the other issue is that we are going ahead. We have a conference, a 2-day conference, to train the developers and certify them. Outside this country, you cannot be a real estate developer, a professional in the real estate development area of the economy without certification, without having your workers trained. Because currently it is a multidisciplinary area. Anybody can come in. You can come in as a citizen, but then that is the issue. Okay,
lastly, the way forward.
The way forward is for us to ask government, you need to recapitalize Federal Mortgage Bank. You need to meet together with the stakeholders and have a meeting to ensure that we implement the housing policy that we have in place and find out where are the problems coming in from and be able to continuously amend the learning curve and not emotionally drop the ball whenever we see a challenge. When we do that interactive discussion, I'm sure we're going to move forward in our quest to provide housing for our people, for everybody.
Housing for all that we've never met, housing by 2010 to 2020. Anyway, many thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Nancy.
Today. Many thanks. All right, I've been speaking with the president, the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria, Surveyor Ugochukwu Chime. He's also the president of the Enugu Chamber of Commerce. We didn't talk trade and commerce today. We looked at housing. Many thanks to you for your comments and opinions. Thank you for being a good company this week. Join us again next week, Monday, bright and early. I and my crew will be here for the best you can be with a change you also want to see. I am Nancy. God bless Nigeria. Bye, everyone.